A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
Christian political parties are working to grow a support base ahead of the next federal election. When will that be? Well, most likely early next year. Family First federal executive has announced that Lyle Shelton will lead its New South Wales Senate ticket in the upcoming federal election. And that follows the announcement of the endorsement of Bernie Finn, who you might remember was expelled from the Victorian Liberal Party for his pro-life and pro-family views. And he is the Senate candidate for Victoria. Lyle Shelton is joining us. He's former head of the Australian Christian Lobby and in his current role, he's National Director of Family First Party. Lyle, a special welcome back to 2020.
Thank you, Neil. It's great to be with you again.
Lyle, Family First, you're obviously putting a lot of building blocks in place. The endorsement of candidates and also a Senate fighting fund. This is all the beginnings of what you're expecting to be a big campaign.
Yes, a big 12 months or so ahead, Neil. We are very determined to ensure that the values that many Christian and conservative people in Australia hold dear for marriage, family, faith, life and freedom, that those values are on the ballot paper at this election because we've got a vision for a better Australia, a vision for restoring the place of the family in public policy, advocating for the married, heterosexual, monogamous family unit as the best for children and to really promote that in public policy where there's really a leadership vacuum for those values at the moment.
Lyle, for those who've never voted for a Christian-based party before, give us in a nutshell of what a Christian-based party stands for and sets it apart from perhaps those mainstream big parties.
Yeah, well, very much to fill the void that's been left where the major parties are shy about talking about, as I say, the married, heterosexual, monogamous family. They find it difficult to even define a woman, let alone a family, in the way that I've just defined it. And obviously want to be clear that, families are inclusive of single people, of course, but we've got to champion mothering and fathering and holding that as an ideal, even though often the ideal isn't met, but we should put that forward as an ideal because we know that's better for children. And if you have strong families, you have a strong nation. So we, I guess, are different from the major parties in that we're unashamed to say that. We're pro-life. We believe in human rights for unborn babies and proper support for their mothers. We believe that there can be an abundance in this nation of housing supply, for instance, and that housing can be made affordable again, and that our electricity can be affordable and abundant again, and that both the major parties, which both support this net zero, which has not been properly costed or scoped out from an economic or engineering point of view, is very much driving our electricity prices through the roof and causing great hardship in terms of cost of living. So I guess they're just a few of the social and economic things that set us apart.
No doubt in the lead up to the next federal election, we'll talk to you as well about economic policies. But it's those social policies that Christian parties become best known for because it seems to be that the major parties just don't get the Christian foundation for these social issues. You say that family, faith, life and freedom are the keys to a flourishing society. How come the major parties are ignoring the sorts of foundations that you're standing for?
That's a really good question. I think society has drifted over the last 50 or 60 years. The sexual revolution has played a big part in that. And we have become shy about moral values in particular. Even the word moral is seen as a dirty word and one that people are reluctant to utter. But I think we've got to, call our nation back to a moral rearmament. And it's not just me saying that. In fact, some very prominent non-Christian commentators are saying this. People like Brendan O'Neill, who was visiting from the UK, not a Christian, but he said moral rearmament's got to be our priority. And I agree with him because we've lost the moral basis for our nation. And I believe a morality based around the heterosexual, monogamous, married, family, not beating around the bush around definitions of whether there should be gay marriage or all those sorts of things. Obviously, I don't think there should be gay marriage. I think we should have marriage based on mothering and fathering. And so being courageous to say that out loud publicly and then to advocate that in the political space, that is really the ground that we're trying to break and to recapture. And I think it's absolutely necessary because our society is heading in the wrong direction and there's no political leadership to turn it back in the right direction, pardon me, particularly when it comes to these really important social issues, which at the end of the day are in the best interests of children, our most vulnerable.
Lyle, we've got leaders, political leaders, but are they great leaders? The way you're describing that is that there's a real void there that needs to be filled, something like a vacuum on leadership. What are you thinking of that our political leaders are lacking and that perhaps those with a Christian values base could perhaps rise to?
I think the biggest thing that's lacking in political leadership in this nation is courage. I spent, as you mentioned in the introduction, I spent many years, 10 years with the Australian Christian Lobby, an organisation I love, and it's an absolutely essential organisation. But the thing that I discovered is that there's plenty of politicians who agree with the sort of things that you and I are talking about now, but few have the courage to say them out loud, to prosecute them, to sustain a debate in the public square. And that's something I've noticed about the radical left, principally led by the Greens, but now increasingly there's many in Labor, many in the left of the Liberal Party who will fight for values which are anti-family, anti-freedom, anti-life, and yet there's very few voices that will stand up and oppose them and put forward a counter vision and a better vision because of the fear of being cancelled, the fear of being seen to be out of line with so-called progressive thinking. And this is a day where we need courage, we need people to come back to basics and say, yes, no, human life needs to be protected from conception through to natural death. Yes, we need to advocate for the family with a mother and a father wherever possible for the benefit of children. We've got to take a realistic approach to energy policy and make sure we're not cruelling our economy and robbing the opportunity for jobs by going down an ideological path with electricity generation, for instance, and you know, with housing affordability, so many other issues. So it really is a lack of courage, there's a lack of leadership, and that's been very disappointing to me. And I guess I've come to the stage where I think we need a political party that will champion these values, that will take votes away from the major parties at election, that will hurt them where it really matters to them, and then ultimately gain seats in particularly upper houses, the Senate and the upper houses of state parliaments, to then hold the balance of power, hold the major parties to account, and try and do what the Greens did on the radical left. If we can bring politics back to the sensible centre by our courage and by sustaining the debates on the things that matter, I think we'll have done our job if we can achieve that over time.
I know that Christian parties are always interested in the next generation because we recognise you pass the baton on from one generation to the next, and children look like being the biggest losers in so many of the policy issues and the sorts of legislation that's passing through our parliaments, be they federal or state. The best interests of the child. Is this where a Christian-based family-first party would be at?
Absolutely. This has been completely missing from our public policy for decades now. I just despair, as I know so many of your listeners do, with the whole transgender agenda, which has come since the same-sex marriage marriage laws were changed in 2017, and just the lack of willingness from both sides of politics to take on the radical LGBTIQA+ political movement. And of course, children are suffering. We've now got incontrovertible evidence coming out, particularly of the UK, from the Cass review there, about the harms being done to children through these child gender clinics, all in the name of gender fluid ideology. Where's the leadership from our politicians? They've been missing in action. Both sides have failed to save women's and girls' sport. So we've got a real problem of leadership in this nation, and this is the vacuum that we're looking to try and fill at Family First. And we simply have to raise up candidates and get people into Parliament who have the courage to say these things out loud and to wear the slings and arrows of the progressive elites and the left, but to break through, because I think the things that we're saying do strike a chord with mainstream Australia, even beyond the Christian constituency. I think there's a lot of mainstream Australians who are with us, but they just never hear the debate argued in the public square.
So, Lyle, I know there'll be a lot of listeners to our conversation now who are impressed and excited about the fact that you are an endorsed candidate for the Senate for New South Wales for Family First, because I know that there'll be a lot of people who can remember right back to the marriage debate when all of the predictions of what would happen if there was a dismantling of the definition of marriage and what would happen to the agenda of the LGBTQIA plus movement, and so many things that you were saying then and being howled down in the public media have now come to pass. That sort of courage you were talking about, is that what you'd anticipate bringing to the debate?
Yeah, I really felt during that period of the marriage debate that we had to find a political expression for the concern that was being raised during the marriage debate. And as you say, many of the things that our campaign predicted would happen as consequences of changing the definition of marriage have. And you know, the key one is the virulent attack on our Christian schools at the moment. Again, we could see this coming. We said this during the marriage campaign that Christian schools would be in the firing line, and that was denied by Tony Abbott's lesbian sister, who was one of the key spokespeople for the Yes campaign. But she was not telling the truth at that time. And now, you know, I've been to crisis meetings now where Christian schools are fighting for their very life. And as Chris Uhlmann wrote in The Australian on the weekend, if parents don't have the right to manifest their faith and educate their children in their faith, what's left? And this is that's a pretty sobering thought coming from, again, a secular journalist. And this is why I think we need a political party that will get in the fight with courage and make the case for freedom of speech, freedom of religion, for marriage, family, for human rights for the unborn, all these things which are neglected by the body politic and which are shunned by our elites. These things need champions, and they need champions in the political arena, and that's what we're seeking to raise up through our political party.
You'll be the lead Senate candidate for Family First in New South Wales. You've also got a seasoned campaigner in Bernie Finn, who is endorsed as the lead Senate candidate for Victoria. You're actually working on a Senate fighting fund now. I guess it costs a lot of money to run these sorts of campaigns. What sort of people are you interested in talking to that might be able to be supporters of Family First this time round?
Yeah, look, we're interested in talking to anyone and everyone, Christians, conservatives. Family First is a party for people of all faiths and none. It's based on the Judeo-Christian ethic, and those values are baked into our core values. So that's where we come from. But anyone, whether they're people of faith or not, are welcome to participate in the party and to support it. And you're right, we need a lot of money to run Senate campaigns. We're starting with a $500,000 Senate fighting fund. I do anticipate we're going to need to raise more close to the election. We're looking to announce other candidates besides Bernie in Victoria and myself in New South Wales. I know we'll have someone in South Australia to announce shortly, and that's exciting. I'm anticipating that coming out of our campaign in the Queensland state election that we'll identify some talent there to hopefully run for Family First as a Senate candidate in the state of Queensland. And of course, we want to get lower house candidates in as many lower house seats across the country to support the Senate vote as possible. So this is a big undertaking. We're stretching ourselves very thin, but we do feel we've got to get the values out there far and wide and give people something to vote for. The biggest thing that I hear from people is we don't know who to vote for. We don't feel there's any ethical option for us anymore. And that's something we're trying to address through our campaigns in the lead up to this federal election.
The time is actually short. The likelihood of a federal election early next year, but there are those that say perhaps it even could be at the end of this year. Lyle Shelton is National Director of Family First Party. If you can be a supporter, if you want to join and be part of the team, if you can be a financial contributor, familyfirstparty.org.au, familyfirstparty.org.au. Lyle Shelton, thanks so much for the update today on 2020.
Thanks for the opportunity, Neil.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.